Okay, now, y'all guys. All right. So, Aisha, I don't know if you like me. I'm probably one of maybe some people out there are like me. I don't know. But Aisha, do you want kids?
Yes. Yes.
I don't want kids. Kids actually love me. I'm really good with kids.
Yeah, I can
But
see that.
I don't really. Somebody told me I probably will be a good father.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm 40 now. I can imagine having a child now. You realize I'll be like 58. If I had them this year, I'd be 58 before they would get out my house.
Yeah, that's you know what? I think that when they're yours, I've always heard it's different when it's yours because I babysat a lot. I have worked in childcare, I've worked in preschool. There was one time where I was just like living off of nanny gigs. So um they are beautiful and fun to be around and energetic, but I love that at the end of the night I was able to go home to like peace and quiet.
Listen,
But I've heard that once they are your own, it's a completely different feeling. So maybe you'll feel a little different. Like once you have your own, you'll like want to share space.
I don't know if I want to put any child through that. I came to realize in my older age, because I didn't really notice it when I was younger, I'm selfish. I really, I'm
Mm.
used to being by myself. I'm used to having my own. Used to be able, moving by myself. But it's like, some
Yeah.
days I really want to be married with kids. Then other days I'm like, absolutely not, because I didn't feel like cleaning up the house today. I didn't feel like cooking today. So it's like I'd be going through that. Like, I
And
don't
they
know.
just have like their own little personalities. I think that's the part that I love. Like I can't wait to see like the type of personality that my kids are gonna have. Like, are they gonna be fun and like and energetic, like Leo energy, like me, or they're gonna be like more quiet and reserved? Like, what are the things they're gonna be interested in? Like, I just love how they have their own little personalities and their own like little lingo, and they're just like their own person that you created. Kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm a great uncle. Huh? I'm a great. I will love you, love you, love you, and then hand you back off to whomever you need to go to. I can be your godparent, all of that. Oh, absolutely. You want to go stay with me for a week? Sure. And then you go back home. Give me
Yep.
somebody who's. I was like, give me somebody who's fully grown. But then again, those teenagers, whoo! It's something about these Gen Zers out here. They have a different type of mentality to the point where it's like they. So when I was a child back in the day, way back in my day, um, um, I thought that I could just kind of deal with anything. And I didn't really, talk about it. I didn't tell nobody or whatever have you. But mom, she was like, "Do you even have friends?" I was like, "Yeah, I just don't. You don't know anything about them. I didn't have imaginary friends. They were real, not just real in my head. They were real. They were real." But I see the generation now, especially millennials and our Gen Zers, is like, for when I'm looking at them, I'm like, y'all don't know how to deal with nothing. It's like everything is like linked to some form of depression or indecision or whatever have you. And for a long time, that was my mentality. But then I like talking with my brother, because he is a millennial, talking with him, I'm realizing that the stuff that you guys are introduced, or that we all are introduced now, is just so readily accessible. Like, I didn't have social media back then. I had a real bully, a bully that I would see physically every day,
Mm.
or I didn't have many, but I did have one, to the point where quick story time. Okay, I had just moved to South Carolina, and for some reason there was this one dude. He just would not let up. It was like every day. It was like constant. This is like ninth grade, constantly.
Mm.
No, it was eighth grade. South Carolina. Just moved there. I ain't know nobody. They didn't know me. So I'm still trying to learn. I'm a military brat. We just kind of moved there, and I'm trying to make friends. But just one person, he just did not like me. So he just kind of just went in every single day. So I just kept dealing with it, because I was a quiet kid. You know, I talk a lot now, but back then, nah. And so it just got to this head. It was probably maybe the second 9 weeks, and I was getting ready to go to the cafeteria. This person was behind me and just kept antagonizing me behind me. So he had his friends just laughing and joking. Then he pushed me. That's when I saw red.
That's the turning point.
I turned around and I went to town on that
Good.
little boy.
Good.
The next thing I knew, I saw black and I woke up in a hospital.
Oh.
We went to tussling.
Ooh.
And I had a concussion and so did he.
Oh, well, at least y'all both was in the hospital.
Oh, no. Absolutely. From that point on, that little crumb snatcher acted like we were best friends.
Ain't it funny how things change?
Ain't it? But like I said, I had a physical bully. These kids now, they have digital bullies.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. And it's like, it's really hard because it's like, how do you get away from it? Everybody's on their phones. Everybody's on social media. And it's like, so now I start to internalize. You have stuff that's going on the television, movies, the news, whatever, our own, peers. And then you actually have to deal with physical bullies as well. And having to deal with all of that, I only had to have to deal with just going to school. Yeah. So I can understand where that anxiety comes from.
Yeah.
And so now it's like giving them the opportunity to actually start to talk about it. So
yeah, I think that is key, and just like a safe place, like just kind of getting that place that makes you feel secure, where you can talk about these things. It's just really important. It's crucial. And I don't remember. I also remember being bullied, and don't remember anywhere that I felt that I could go. I felt like the school counselors didn't have time. I felt like I was just, nobody really cared, and I was just kind of dealing with it alone. And sometimes the way that I coped with it were not healthy ways. But I just didn't know what to do. I didn't have the words that I have now as an adult that I wish I would have had as a kid, even as a middle schooler. Just being bullied, antagonized, racism, all kinds of things and comments that were said. And I internalized it all. And I remember writing a lot when I was in like 5th grade. We had these little journals, and I just felt like my teachers were out to get me, and I just would write. I hate teachers, and I just did a lot of writing. And then my teacher, she kind of pulled me to the side. We had to turn our journals in, so she saw what I was writing, and she had to have a conversation with me and my mom and ask me why I felt that way. And she said she apologized. She didn't want me to feel singled out, and she gave me the support I needed. And we turned that year around. So writing is kind of how I coped with just being bullied, or at the time felt like I was kind of being targeted because I was the only Black kid in a room full of white kids, and I felt like my teachers were every little thing that I did. But we kind of went through that process, and writing was how I was able to just kind of let loose and cope, and I felt that was probably the healthiest way. And also sports. I loved sports. I was a softball player, so I went to the field, and that's what helped me kind of just like, okay, this is where I feel like Aisha again. This is where I feel like I'm good out here. I feel accepted out here. I feel like I'm on top of my game. And so I started to perform, and performance helped me to feel more grounded and not feel like I was straight up loser, or felt like, nobody liked me, because I was good out here. And so the softball field kind of became my space.
Nice. I am glad that you had that moment of, well, at least the teacher saw, okay, there's an issue here. So we have to figure out what can we do to make it better.
Yeah.
And so you have so many kids now, and really adults. Like if we deal with it now, it really sets us up. Or if we deal with it then, it really sets us up to develop into the adults and better adults. And so I'm kind of glad that we're kind of being able to kind of talk about that today. We have a wonderful person that's going to be kind of just talking about, we have a psychiatrist. We have a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. There's a difference, and we're going to be learning what the difference between those two things are. And maybe by the end of it, I might want kids.
Yes, and she's a child and an adolescent and adult psychologist. So she is going to touch it all. And so I'm so excited for you guys to be able to tune in and listen to who we have next. It's really going to be one of those episodes that really touches your life and has you changing your perspective on mental health.
So thank y'all for tuning in to RDU Black. Again, my name is DeVashi.
And my name's Aisha.
And we're just going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hey, what's up? It's DeVashi from RDU Black Podcast. Have you checked out our website yet? We want to let you know that we are creating a Black-owned business directory. We would love for you to add your business or your favorite Black-owned business. We want to make sure that all of us are represented. So go over to rdublackpodcast.com. That's RDUBLK podcast.com and add your business today. Let's grow together.
Hello. Welcome back to another awesome episode of RDU Black.
I am, again, excited, and I am not going to say extremely. I'm excited to get to know this powerhouse, another GOAT in the RDU area. Definitely, I think this is going to be a conversation that many of our people need to continually to have. I know we've kind of started to normalize it, something that we definitely want to let our listeners know more about, and I can't wait to hear from them.
Absolutely. Same here. I'm really excited to hear about just ways that she chooses to cope and also to kind of just share her story about just overcoming various fears and things in her life and just any advice that she has to give to our community. As you know, last year was just a very heavy year for a lot of people. A lot of people experience loss in various ways, and learning how to cope with all of the ups and downs of last year really saved people. Looking back at it today, and we're still in it. So I'm really excited to bring up our next guest feature for this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into this bio because it is a meaty one.
Take your time.
Dr. Erikka Dzirasa is a double board certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist who has been committed to serving individuals and families impacted by psychiatric conditions for over 15 years. She is passionate about education, increasing mental health awareness, breaking down barriers of stigma, and addressing and eliminating health disparities that impact individuals from diverse ethnic backgrounds. Dr. Dzirasa earned her Bachelor of Science at Spelman College, Master of Public Health in Healthcare and Leadership at UNC Chapel Hill, and her Doctor of Medicine at Duke University School of Medicine, where she completed her residency and fellowship. After graduating from Duke, she served as the medical director of an eating disorder hospital, where she helped to develop policies and programming to deliver high quality and evidence-based treatment within multiple levels of care. She also has specialized in the treatment of mood disorders, anxiety disorders, ADHD, autism, spectrum disorders, PTSD in children, adolescents, and adults. As a mental health advocate, Dr. Dzirasa currently serves on the Race, Ethnicity, and Equity Committee for the North Carolina Psychiatric Association. She also is a delegate for the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Assembly. She currently serves on the executive board of Project Heal, a nonprofit organization which helps to eliminate disparities and access to eating disorder treatments. She is the co-founder and partner of Catalyst Therapeutic Services, LLC, based in Durham, North Carolina. She also serves as a consulting associate for Duke University School of Medicine. During her free time, she loves to teach cycling and yoga classes. Please allow us to welcome Dr. Erikka Dzirasa.
Yay. Hello, Dr. Erikka.
As I read that bio, I just am so grateful that you took the time to join us on RDU Black. And I'm like, I don't see how she has time for any of this.
We are not worthy. We are not worthy.
I'm honored to be here. I'm grateful that you guys have me so we could talk about mental health and, again, normalizing, like you said, normalizing these conversations. So thank you so much for having me tonight.
Sure, absolutely. I want to just say that I went back and probably watched 3 different interviews that you've done so far, and I was just amazed about how much and how much you know. But I was like, she's a doctor, so of course it's gonna come like second nature, you know. I'm over here barely got a BA, and I'm
Barely. We will
so
all the degrees, the BAs, yes.
okay.
That's right. I know that's right.
So I know you went to Duke University, and that's in Durham. Where are you originally from? Are you from the area, or are you a transplant?
I'm a transplant, but I think I can officially say I am now a Durhamite. Like,
Yes, we
No,
love
no.
to see it.
We say Durham
Yeah.
residents. We say Durham residents.
I say Durhamite. I'm a Durhamite too.
I'm a Durham resident. Okay, my bad. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. Shout out to the Buffalo Bills. We almost made it this season. But my family, they couldn't really tolerate those blizzards anymore, so we moved down south when I was in high school. So I actually went to high school in Jacksonville, Florida, and then I moved back up to Atlanta, where I went to Spelman College, and went straight from Spelman to Duke and started out at my first year in medical school in 2001, actually. So it's been 20 years.
Oh yeah,
in Durham.
Oh yeah, you're a Durham resident at this point.
This is the longest time I've lived anywhere. So
that says a lot about the city.
Yes.
So you said Spelman, so HBCUs out there, absolutely. Whoop whoop Spelman, Atlanta, Georgia, stand up, So yeah, I actually I have a love-hate relationship with Atlanta. I do. I really do. I don't know. It's just I don't know. The older I'm getting, the more I'm starting to like the area.
Okay.
Because Atlanta is, in my opinion, it's not Georgia. It's its own thing.
Well, as soon as you step outside of Atlanta, though, just like in Durham, like as soon as you step outside of the Triangle, you realize, like, oh, I'm in North Carolina.
Trees, dirt, corn, cabbage.
I love it. But I forget sometimes, it's like as soon as you leave, you see like the Trump signs and stuff. You're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Especially where I'm from. I'm from Eastern North Carolina. So
yeah. So
especially where Aisha went to college. I'm sure up there in the mountains.
In Boone, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah. Boone is gorgeous. Though.
It is. I saw your pictures at Hanging Rock. I was like, okay. So I kind of mentioned this briefly in the bio. But last year, we kind of all had some different ways that we really need to cope with the pandemic that was going on. Lots of people experienced depression. Lots of people experienced job loss, and just kind of like that uneasy feeling of not knowing what to do, where to go, where not to go. Should I wear a mask? Should I get vaccinated? Is a vaccination even coming? Not even talk about the political unrest as well. So it was just one of those really wonky years that are going down in history. So we all have things that we go to cope, and I know that yours is your outlet. It really is body movement and yoga. And recently on your Instagram, you did a power yoga session, and you called it, you were wearing a shirt that said Silence the Shame. And so I did some research and found out that Silence the Shame is a nonprofit organization. It focuses on education and awareness around mental health, and they aim to normalize the conversation and peel back the layers of shame to eliminate stigma and provide support for mental well-being. So you mentioned, that yoga was something that you really cared about, and you just as kind of a new love in like the last.
Oh no, she's an instructor.
Yeah.
It's not a love. She's an instructor. She teaches folks.
Oh my
yes.
Yes, we do our homework. I was hoping you could just tell the listeners about your love for yoga and how you use yoga to educate others about mental health.
Yeah, so absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I it's funny how I came about liking yoga. I went to a yoga class about years ago when I first moved here, one of my friends, she loves yoga and she has, she's super flexible and, but probably has the body type we all envision when we think of yoga. So I went with her to this class and I was like, I'm never doing that again. I just felt like it was not for me. I didn't see anybody who looked like me. I was like, I didn't see any body types that looked like me. I was like, yeah, you're on your own with this one, girl.
That's a no for me.
No, that would be a negative, right? So I didn't go. I discovered it, and I guess it was 2017, 2018. Actually, no, 2018. I actually quit my job, and I didn't have like backup or anything. It was just like not the right environment. It was time for me to go. I knew I had to go somewhere. I just didn't know where I was going. So it was a little bit of a break. And I thought, okay, well, let me check out this yoga class in Durham. There's this class like yoga on the rooftop and they had a live DJ. And I was like, okay, I might be able to roll with that,
Okay.
Were these at the Durham Hotel?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember those.
Was it the Durham Hotel or was it one of those places in downtown? But it was super dope. And I was just like, okay, I think I might be able to do this. So I started going for a few months and then the yoga instructor was like, hey, you're picking this up really quickly. And I know that you're also a psychiatrist. Have you ever thought about being an instructor? And I laughed at her. I was like, absolutely no. And the reason I laughed was because I love body movement, but I've always been into like hardcore, heavy lifting, doing the weightlifting and cycling. I actually teach cycling classes. So thought of me being a yoga teacher, I was like, that just seems total opposite. But I took her up on it and did the certification and really fell in love with power yoga, which, does help to, I think, get out a lot of stress for me. It helps me to be in a zone. It has a meditation kind of component to it. And it helped me significantly, I think, with the anxiety at that time. And Aisha, you talked a little bit about the not knowing, right? And we can all identify and relate to that during this time of the pandemic, right? Because we just don't know what to happen in the future. When is it going to end? How long do we have to deal with all of this? And I found myself being in that position, just not knowing where my career would go. So there was some anticipatory anxiety of, just kind of waiting it out and having to trust the process.
Yeah.
And it helped me to learn how to be present, because when you're in some of those poses, you're really not thinking about anything. Trying not to fall or trying to
Listen, I'm trying to pull a Charlie horse or something,
Exactly. But it really does help you to focus on the here and now. It helps you to be present. And that was something that I share with my patients a lot, but I really had to put that into practice for myself. How do I be present in the moment, not worrying about tomorrow or the next day, but really just saying, hey, I have this moment. What can I do today to cultivate joy? What can I do to take care of myself and my mind? And how can I prepare for whatever is to come? I could do the preparation today. So that's what really inspired me to do it. I love it. And during the pandemic, just seeing, I'm in this group, there's about like 3,500 Black physicians on Facebook, Black female physicians. So we had a private group on Facebook, and so many people were talking about how stressed they were, trying to take care of their own families, but also being essential workers, having to go in and take care of their patients, and just how that was having an impact on them emotionally. So I said, you know what, let me just offer up a free class on Sundays, power yoga, just offer it up to folks that way if they want to join. It's on Zoom. I was a new teacher anyway, so it's like,
nice.
I'm learning, they're learning, we're in this together kind of thing. And it's been really nice to just be able to offer that to some of the women, and some fellas join too. It's online virtual class. And like I said, it's just been a nice outlet to have people take time for themselves.
Yes.
That's really important. We really, we talk about taking care of so many other people. We always, y'all know, y'all are busy. Y'all up on IG watching all these videos and doing research while working. Podcast, so you know how it's like to be so busy and to juggle so many things, but we have to really take time for ourselves to be present and to just take care of ourselves and mental health.
So you had said that that 2018 you just quit your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have a plan B? Was it just, it was like, I got sick of it. And then, um, a year later, you start your practice,
Yeah.
your business. And then a year after that, COVID hits. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that transition of, okay, quit my job, don't know what I'm going to do, start a business, and then COVID hits?
Yes, yes. So the end of 17, entering 18. And again, I knew the timing. It was like, okay, I know that this position, it was a blessing to be in that position. I learned a lot from it. I have gained relationships to this day that are so, meaningful. So, but I just knew it wasn't a long-term fit for me. And there were, sometimes some things happen and you're like, yeah, okay, this ain't gonna work anymore. Like this might be this day might come a little sooner than I thought.
Right.
So
Sometimes you're there.
sometimes you're there, sometimes they're there, and you have to make the best decisions. You have to prioritize yourself sometimes. And I had a hard time with that because, I'm used to giving so much to other people. So I think it was really hard to say, what is it that I need to be healthy? And to say, I actually really need to just put the brakes on and try something different. So it was funny when I told my boss, oh, so what are you going to be doing next? And you must have some amazing opportunity. I was like, I don't know. She was like, wait, so you're leaving and you don't have another job or
Oh
nothing else?
God.
I was like, mm-mm.
Lord, please make me so successful that I can quit my job and really don't worry about what's next.
You know
Because
what?
I already got the funds to be able to do it.
Savings, you definitely want to build a savings that you
That's
can
right.
live off of because you never know, right? And again, this pandemic, none of us could have been able to predict this would have happened. And right, this is now been a full year. And
Yes.
I remember when it was going down, it's like, oh, a couple cases in LA and a couple cases in New York. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh wait, we're shutting down. Like, okay, but this will be just a few months and by summer we're good. No,
Nope.
be here a year later, right? So
That's right.
want to build a savings so that you can prepare just because you never know what's going to happen.
Preach.
But you had to prepare for more than just a rainy day.
You have to prepare for more than just a rainy day. You're absolutely right. You have to be very diligent and, and it's a blessing. It really is. I know not everyone has that ability, right? So you want to make sure when you're making those decisions, you are calculating all the risks and things like that too, and being a psychiatrist, I knew that if it came down to it, I would be able to find some kind of gig, but I wanted to be intentional about what my next step would be. So a couple of my colleagues, they actually left the same place at the same time. We had no idea.
Oh, wow.
We're not going to talk about why.
That's for another conversation on the air, probably not on the podcast. But we were talking, and they had actually said they were thinking about doing a practice. And I thought, they invited me to join. And I was like, well, let me think about it. I definitely love the idea of having a private practice. And I also wanted to have flexibility to do other things that I'm interested in because, again, I'm really passionate about mental health and the community and, educating other people. So, I just wanted to have flexibility to do other things. So I thought, okay, this is a good direction because going into private practice can be scary and overwhelming, especially if you're doing it solo. And I didn't want to do it solo because I really love working in teams. I love the collaborative aspect of healthcare, and especially in mental health. I think we have to work together as teams. So I've talked to people in solo private practices, and it can be very isolating or lonely. And I knew I didn't want to do that, but the opportunity to work together with two other individuals, I was like, okay, this might actually be a good thing. And we talked a little bit about what we envisioned and, just started coming up with ideas for the name of the practice. And, we knew that we wanted it to be in Durham because we had a really strong relationship with Duke. And, one of my partners, she and I both were in a Duke psychiatry residency together. And then my other partner, he had a really great relationship with UNC because he was working for a while. So, we knew we wanted it to be in Durham so we could access, young people from all schools, from all the universities. And it just grew. It really grew. And yeah, here we are a few years later, and we have, it was funny because during the pandemic, I was just like, oh man, like, we just got this new space. So we moved into our new space maybe less than a year when that pandemic hit. And
which I heard is a beautiful space. From what I'm told, from what I was listening, and they were like, it feels like home.
yes, that is absolutely what we wanted. We wanted people to not feel like they were in this like sterile medical environment. When you come to talk to someone about things that nobody else knows, things that you may hold shame around, or just really afraid to talk about, we don't want you to come and not feel comfortable. So that was something that was really important to all of us. So it was really fun finding a place and buying it, so we bought our space and we own it, and then to decorate it, that was a process. So then,
come on, own it.
oh yeah, honey, we own
we ain't renting around here.
No, we considered it, but we were like, why do that? It's better to own. So it was a really great. It took us a while to find the space, but once we found it, we were like, okay, this is it.
I love that.
Yeah. So by the time the pandemic hit and we were told, oh, we have to transition to virtual 100%. I mean, I didn't know what that would look like. We were scrambling. We had to find the right technology and change everything over in a matter of a week. And it was kind of crazy. And I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't have left that job after all. Because I didn't know what to expect. I was just like, are people really gonna connect virtually for therapy and for psychiatric treatment? But
that's real.
It works, and I think it's great because there are now people who really don't want to go back from it, and because now we have this pandemic and now we're seeing the mental health aftermath, right? Like how people are dealing with depression and anxiety and all the things. There's such a need for mental health services. So we've been so busy. We've hired 2 people during the pandemic, a therapist and a psychiatrist, and we will likely be bringing more people on because there's a need. There's a need there. Yeah.
Before we go into what you specialize in, this actually goes into that really. You said that you hired on both psychologists and another psychiatrist.
Yes.
So in my research, I was trying to figure out the difference between the two.
Yes.
And the only thing that I could really find, and it's probably the most simplistic version of that, is that a psychiatrist can prescribe medicine and a psychologist can't. But I know it's a little bit deeper than that. But if you can kind of like, as we're kind of like moving into that, actually, your particular specialty, can you kind of explain the difference?
Absolutely. I'd love to. I think it's so important to know the difference, especially because there is such a critical need for people of color, especially Black people, to be in this field. There's such a need. So, Black people only make up 2% of psychiatrists, 2% of psychologists, 2%.
That's
two.
A whole 2. And 4% of licensed social workers. So there's a need there, right?
Yeah.
We need resources, and we need people who look like us to provide those resources, because the data shows individuals are much more likely, especially people of color, to be in treatment and to stay engaged in treatment when they are seeing someone who looks like them. So it's really important to bring people on. So I love talking about this because I want to help. I don't know what the audience is for this podcast, but I want to help recruit people to this field. So essentially the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist is that a psychologist after college, they will get a PhD in psychology, and they will learn how to do testing. They'll learn how to do evaluations. Some will go into research, some do the clinical route, and they can learn how to do different therapeutic techniques. The main difference is that psychiatrists, rather than after college going to get a PhD, they actually go to medical school. So we are physicians. I've delivered babies, I've done surgery, so you do the full thing in medical school. After you graduate from medical school, you then go on to what's called a psychiatry residency program. And depending on what kind of doctor you want to be after medical school, you can go and be an orthopedic surgeon, you can go and be a cardiologist. So that's where we kind of diverge. So then we go on to do our residency, where we learn also how to do therapy. So that's one thing. I think a lot of people assume that psychiatrists are all about shoving a pill down somebody's throat. That is not at all what we are about. We have to learn therapeutic techniques. So we all can do therapy, some not to, but we are all trained to do therapy, and we can prescribe medications as well. So we can provide both. And it really depends on that psychiatrist and their training in terms of, what their background is and how they like to go about treating, and if they like to do therapy. So I do both. I do have patients that I see and only do therapy. I don't prescribe any medications, but there are times when we need both. And I do think, in the time of COVID, I love the fact that, you guys are highlighting mental health, and I think we're starting to normalize conversations about therapy. I think we still got a lot of work to do when it comes to medicine.
Yeah, that's true. Because we got people right now, the conversation of, am I going to get the vaccine? I'm not going to get the vaccine.
Ooh, okay.
It's a special vaccine for the Blacks than it is for everybody else,
I've heard it all. I've heard so many conspiracies. Even today, one of my best friends, I was like, okay, you're coming at me with some information. I have no idea where you got this data from, but
I would love to know what the data was.
It was Hotep data. That's what.
Yep.
I was like, sir, no.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so what are you thinking? So do you think you might get the vaccine?
Oh, I'm getting it. 100%. I'm getting it.
Okay, both of y'all shaking your heads. Yay! Awesome.
Yes, yes, of course.
I can't wait.
Like anybody else, it's scary at first thinking about this and how fast it came along. So typically things go through, I know you would know this, but typically things I think go through phases, and then they need to get approved. It's like a longer process. So this is kind of abnormal, right? Like,
well, I think I'm so glad you brought that up, because the reality is it has been going on in stages, and actually
it has.
One of the doctors, Dr. Kizzy,
Kizzy.
Hey,
we're trying to get her on.
Yes.
We've already I believe it was Tiffany that brought up her name. Was it Tiffany, or if it was I'm not sure, but they were like saying the one that was actually been working on it for the past 10 years came from Durham, North Carolina, or came from North Carolina.
Came from North Carolina. She was working at the National Institute of Health, so she had already been doing groundwork, and that's a lot of people, they may not know that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It does seem like it was rushed. Like all of a sudden we're hearing about it, and then it's like, whoa, now a vaccine, and then wait a minute, FDA is approving it. But we have to remember she had been working on it for years.
Yeah, okay.
And when we think about the population, normally we don't get as many people in studies. It's almost like we have a real life study right now. There are so many people who have received this vaccine, and again, it's very well tolerated. No significant serious adverse events, like death or anything like that. People are telling me like, oh, it's trying to mess up your fertility, and don't take it. No, there's no data to support any of that.
Right.
But the data we have shows that 100% of individuals who get the vaccine do not get hospitalized or die due to COVID.
Wow.
Right.
That's awesome.
It can't get any better than that. The effectiveness rate of these vaccines are amazing. And again, this is not something that's been rushed. People have been researching it for years. And of course, then towards the end, it's like, okay, how can we get this out? The different strains and things like that. But again, there's data there, and I'm so glad that you guys are on board. I had mine. I had both of my vaccines. I went with my mom, so it was a special moment.
Nice.
So she was scared, and I didn't get scared till like the last minute. I was like, oh, I'm about to get that kizzy. And then oh gosh, I think I watched too many TikTok videos of like, people having twitches and stuff. And I was like, I'm good.
No, thank you for saying that. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think lack of information is just the reason it builds fear, right? Lack of information builds fear. And so for you to even say that just gives me also more comfort. And sometimes it's just about taking the time to research and really to look into it, because had I taken my time to research, I probably would have found that out. It's been in development for a long time. And that gives me like, just like a sense of peace. So thank you for saying that, so that others, hopefully hopefully that encourages others to go and do their research if they're having any doubts about getting the vaccine.
Yes, absolutely. I think because it's been politicized, unfortunately, there's so much information out there. So check your sources too.
Yes.
And, the thing, like you said, about fear, fear is a feeling. That doesn't mean it's a truth. So we always want to check our fear facts. We want to fact check everything when it comes
That's
to
good.
it so we can prepare ourselves. So absolutely.
Can you say that again?
Wait,
Right. I'm just like,
for people in the back.
In front of people in the back. In the cheap seats.
okay. So my next question was just kind of talking about disparities in minority care. There's usually these barriers to medical access. So access can be limited by lack of insurance and coverage. And there's more than half of uninsured U.S. residents are people of color. So people with limited resources also experience logistical barriers such as taking time off of work, securing childcare, finding transportation to and from appointments. Another barrier would be lack of qualified available professionals. Like you said, what the small percentages of people who are actually practicing. And so, do you think this is true information? And, what other barriers of mental health care do you think we face as a community? Like what are our most pressing barriers right now for our community that you've kind of observed through your client base and just from being Black in Durham? Like, you kind of have a sense of when people come in, what are some of the things that are pretty common, that you would say is trends that our community is facing?
Well, actually, you better go, girl. You already laid out a ton of them. So I would absolutely agree. The lack of insurance or underinsurance, not having those resources, not having financial resources, absolutely not having childcare,
Yes.
especially now when people, some people are working at home and trying to make sure, they're teachers and at the same time, making sure they're teaching their kids. It's really hard to navigate all of that. So yeah, those are absolute barriers. I think the other thing that I see really is stigma. There is so much stigma and shame when it comes to mental health for whatever reason. And I think oftentimes it's probably because we identify it as being a weakness.
Mm.
And if we think that it's a weakness or that we are somehow to blame, I can't tell you how many times I hear, but I should know how to do this, or I should be able to get out of this. I shouldn't feel depressed because I know I'm blessed, right? Too blessed to be stressed.
Come on.
Because we start telling ourselves all the things that we should be doing. There's this kind of should shame cycle that occurs, and it traps us, right?
Yeah.
From being able to have that awareness that, okay, and actually need help. And then what happens is we end up suffering in silence. And that's why I love that organization, Silence the Shame, because I think we have to start talking about it more and more so that people feel comfortable seeking out resources if they really need them. But we have to let go of the shame and the fear. It's okay to be afraid, but we don't want that to get in the way of us pursuing the care that we need. We have to let go of this idea that it's a weakness or that we are to blame if we are struggling with a mental illness. What I tell folks is that, psychiatric conditions are brain diseases. Our brain is an organ, just like our heart, just like our kidneys. So if you had a heart condition, you wouldn't just be like, whoo, well, let me just pray this away and just hope that these palpitations just get better on their own. No, sometimes you actually really do need a medication. Same thing for, diabetes. Well, yes, your doctor is going to tell you to make some lifestyle modifications, but you also may need to be on insulin for a little while. So,
Yeah.
if we can have other issues that impact other organs, why wouldn't we have conditions that can impact our brain? So that's one barrier, I think, is shame and stigma and that cycle. Definitely think, like you said, we need more of us in the workforce. We need more Black doctors. We need more Black therapists. We need more Black psychologists. We need more Black dietitians. I mean, dietitians, I can name maybe one I know. One
Wow.
we really need Black dietitians, so we need more representation. But even if we can't find that immediately, right, not all of us are going to be able to see a provider of color, but we need to at least be able to find providers who are culturally sensitive, right? And who are able
Mhm.
to shift in such a way and create space for us to bring everything into the room, even if that includes race-based trauma and other sorts of things that we may not necessarily feel comfortable talking about. We need to find those providers who are culturally sensitive and aware. So, we may, again, I just want to highlight, we may not be able to find a person of color, especially depending on where you live. Resources can be very limited.
Yeah.
So the one
Sure.
thing though I love about what's happened in terms of creativity with the pandemic is we now have virtual services. Telemedicine, it's been amazing to
Yes.
prove, right, that we can actually provide good quality evidence-based care via telemedicine and reach neighborhoods and areas, rural areas. I know you mentioned
Mhm.
from Eastern North Carolina, right? So there's definitely a lack of resources. But I actually have patients in Eastern North Carolina now.
Lack of resources.
Yeah,
My God.
yeah. So, there aren't that many. I can think of maybe 2 Black child psychiatrists that are in the area, maybe 1 now. But yeah, I've been getting referrals from that area. So, it's cool to be able to see folks in North Carolina, to see folks out in the mountains. I have people who, I don't know what's going to happen when the pandemic's over. I don't think they're going to come drive 3 hours. Maybe they will, but now
Probably not.
I found a
Probably
whole
not.
cohort of people from all over the state, which is really amazing.
That's
So,
wonderful.
yeah,
I was reading that so you're a child psychiatrist.
yeah.
That's
Adolescent and adult, child, adolescent, adult. So I see the full
child, adolescent, everybody.
everybody.
You
Everyone.
got everybody. Everybody. Kind of started off as the medical director of an eating disorder hospital. Um, how did you decide to start there, and then you kind of just I guess you opened up more of the specialty to incorporate other things?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually started my very first job was actually staying on at Duke. So I after I finished my fellowship, so I did my residency and then I did additional training to specialize with children and adolescents. So that was another couple years. And then I stayed on as faculty at Duke. And then I worked for the state hospital actually. So I worked in a child latency unit with 5 to 10-year-olds and or 5 to 12-year-olds. And they had ADHD. Most of them were traumatized. Most of them had PTSD that led to them having a significant emotional dysregulation, behavioral problems. A lot of them were in the foster care system. So I've kind of seen and done it all. But the eating
Mm,
disorder piece, how that happened, we're not always, as physicians, all trained to treat individuals with eating disorders. But I figure if I'm gonna be a psychiatrist, I probably should know how to do that. So
mhm.
I requested to do a year of training working with the Eating Disorder Center at Duke. And during that time, it was pretty amazing because I went into it with assumptions and my own bias, right? Thinking that, all right, I'm going to be seeing a ton of probably 16, 18-year-old, Caucasian females, all with anorexia, because that's what
Yeah.
I thought of when I thought of an eating disorder. And if we Google that, those are going to be the images that we see. But I was very surprised to see, oh, wow, eating disorders actually impact all people, all
Yes.
shapes, all sizes. Actually, most of them are not underweight. Most people suffer from binge eating disorder, actually, than anorexia. And Black people, brown people actually have higher rates of binge eating disorder or bulimia. So it was very amazing to just, for me to check myself in a way to
Mm.
see that, oh, wow, okay, this actually impacts everyone. So it was a really cool experience. So when the opportunity came about and they needed to hire someone, they were really excited to see that I had this specialized training in the treatment of eating disorders. So it seemed like a good fit. So I was there for quite a few years, and then I still do the work. I just do it more on an outpatient basis than in a higher level of care.
That was good. Erica, I saw Dr. Erica, excuse me.
Oh,
I saw I saw that on your Instagram you actually posted that Black teens are 50% more likely to engage in bulimic. Bulimic, am I pronouncing that right?
Bulimic. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Behaviors than white teens, and Blacks are significantly less likely to be diagnosed with an eating disorder, receive treatment for eating disorder services, and to be included in research studies. And so you kind of hit the nail on the head with exactly what you said. So why do you think this is the case? Because I don't know. It's just, I think maybe movies and the media kind of portrays it differently. So I just never really thought that it affected us and our people. And just kind of thinking about growing up as a Black teenager, Black woman teenager, I just never this was never anything that I experienced myself or any of my friends that were around me and my church members. But that's a very small group of, adolescents. It's not, really broad. So why do you think that's the case? And we kind of have this associated with another race. It's not us.
I think you nailed it right. Look at what we see in the media. Look at the movies we see. And how eating disorders are portrayed. We really don't see folks who look like us, but I can tell you we are out there because I've seen them. And I have to say it's interesting because, yeah, you're right. Most, especially Black individuals, are going to be less likely to be diagnosed. And that's because, probably because of provider bias, but also because of the bias we hold too. If we are struggling with disordered eating or, poor relationships with body image and things like that result in disordered eating, we sometimes may want to hide that and not even really be aware that, oh, wow, this is a problem.
Yes.
Be in denial about it. I will say the majority of Black patients I have who do have eating disorders that I even see today, I can't think of a single one who came to me because of that primary reason.
Of course.
Every last one of them, it was either, primary concern was depression or anxiety. But I asked everybody, in my intake, I asked what their relationship is like with their body, what their relationship is like with food. We have a lot of people who struggle with body image in our community.
Yeah.
And that depends on a lot of factors, genetics, their own environment they may find themselves in, comparisons, social media contributes to that too. So I think, if we are in denial, and I've heard patients say, I don't know how I can have an eating disorder like that. Like Black people don't even get that, like that's like, check this out. I've seen boys. I've seen Black boys with full blown anorexia with bulimia nervosa. So they exist and they're impacting our people. Is just the awareness we have to, check in with ourselves. And as providers, we have to be more intentional about screening for eating disorders in all people. The most recent data I saw was that providers will pick up maybe 17% of eating disorders in Black people versus like over 50% or around 50% in other races. So, we definitely get overlooked. And it's not only us. I think it's also true for Latinos, for Native Americans. So it's really important for us to just, again, talk about it, right? Normalize conversation to help people understand that, they can impact our community. And because we don't talk about it and don't raise awareness around it, sometimes it can also be hard to figure out how to get the resources. So that's another barrier. And, when you look at eating disorder research throughout the years, I mean, now we're starting to get a little bit better, but in the past, it really only focused on anorexia, or they would do research in treatment centers that were all private pay. So individuals who didn't have insurance or who are on Medicaid couldn't afford to be in those treatment centers, so they would get left out of those research studies. So it's a very limited cross section in terms of the population we're even researching. So we still have a lot of work to do in terms of the research and understand to provide culturally informed care to people of color, and also getting more providers into this field because there are very few,
very few. I wanted to talk about, and we were talking about this earlier. I'm a Generation Xer.
Me too.
Aisha, I believe, is a millennial. I believe, right? And so the thought process of the baby boomers and the Generation X, about how we deal with mental health is
Mhm.
totally skewed from the millennial and the now Generation Zer.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more willing to talk about it.
Mhm.
Mainly because Generation Z is starting to even normalize it even more and bring a little bit more attention to it. But how I was raised is that you just kind of just deal with it and you don't talk about it. You kind of just sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
But I don't think that was healthy. Parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, we always have that one crazy uncle. And no one really says anything about it, you know. But now you got Generation Zers going like, what's wrong with him? You
Yeah.
know, they're going to be the one. What's wrong with him? He, you know, we,
That's right.
and I'm kind of glad about that. But can you kind of just talk briefly about just kind of like that progression of thought
Yeah.
of kind of getting to where we are now, and based off of just the things that we kind of got wrong before.
Right, right. Well, I think you are absolutely right. When we think about that generation before us and the baby boomers, we have to also, think about mental health in the context of what they were experiencing, right? And the racism and, Jim Crow and all the things that they went through, and how Black people really were, I mean, we still are, unfortunately. We're seeing that even today, but we think about the experiences that they had, the maltreatment, the mistrust that they had with the medical community, and especially with psychiatrists, and when we think about those days back in the day, so not for our Gen Xers, but, when we think about the asylums, for instance,
Oh, well, yes.
and how people were, sent to asylums, they were sent away from their community when they struggled with mental illness. So think about the messaging of that, right?
Yeah.
So we've come a long way in terms of understanding the brain, and I think because of the amazing advances in neuroscience and neurobiology, we're able to better articulate what happens in the brain when we're struggling with psychiatric conditions. It's not just, again, it's a brain illness, and we've come along in terms of how we treat psychiatric conditions, and we don't have to send people away and ostracize them in a way because they're suffering. We can
Mhm.
still do it together as a community. But I think it like you said, the generations, that older generation, and even our generation, I'm a Gen Xer as well. We weren't trained to talk about those things
Yeah.
because I think, again, of the stigma and the shame associated with it. But I think it's important because the reality is mental illness is brought about by genetic background and our biological
Mhm.
makeup, and combination of that with environmental stressors. So I love that the Gen Zers and the millennials are like, hey, what is wrong with Uncle back there? We need to start having conversations. We want to understand our family history. We
That's
have
right.
a history of bipolar disorder. Those are things that I need to know because I need to make sure, hey, if I'm at risk for that,
Mhm.
be careful with my sleep schedule, and maybe I won't, partake in smoking marijuana if I know that there's a strong family history of schizophrenia, and that, I could develop psychosis due to smoking marijuana. Maybe I need to be more careful with drinking. So I think, there are a lot of things, or maybe I need to be more aware and do like annual mental health checkups, just like we would go to a physician, just to
Yeah.
meet with a therapist. I think everybody needs to be in therapy, to be honest. But
Absolutely.
but I think we need to start normalizing those conversations in our family to better understand what our family members struggled with. And then again, that helps to release the shame. If I know that, my mom or an aunt struggled with something, and I can hear about how they made it through it, I want to hear those stories of resiliency too. I think
Yes. Yes.
we neglect to talk about that too. We as Black people are so resilient.
Yes,
I
we
mean,
are.
beyond is our DNA. Really is, when you think about all of the things our people have been through
That's right.
pre-slavery, back to when we were in Africa before we even got brought on these slave ships. I mean, we went through a lot. When you go to the slave castles in Ghana, and I mean, goodness, we have been through so much as a people. So we need to understand how we are so resilient. We want to learn those stories of resiliency, but if we don't talk about our struggles, it's kind of hard to get people to understand that narrative. And they feel isolated. They feel like it's all their fault. They blame themselves. They keep it inside, and that doesn't help them, right? So we need to get it out there, talk about how the family has made it through certain psychiatric conditions or not. You know,
Yeah.
maybe there's suicides, you know, maybe we need to talk about that. Maybe we need to talk about the substance use issues in the family
Yes.
and how to support each other when a family member suffers from a substance use disorder or bipolar disorder. But we've got to start having those conversations in our families.
Such a beautiful way to look at that and start the conversation. And you
Yeah.
just, I mean, the way you just kind of made it seems just very like easy. And, you know, kind of, I
Yes.
think that we kind of talk ourselves out of it because we're like, well, what would someone think if we bought this up? Or, you know, I mean, I've had instances where I've kind of bought some things up and it's kind of met with resilience. I mean, they're trying to like resist what I'm saying,
Right.
and they're kind of fighting back in a way. And they're like, you know, don't kind of want to proceed with that conversation, or why are you asking that? It's none of your business, or it was the past. So I think that was
See the difference in the generations right there?
It is, no, and I think it brings about pain.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's really at the end of the day, right? When we meet that resistance, we have to figure out what's behind the wall, right? And usually we put a barrier there because we want to protect something. What do we want to protect? We want to, maybe it was fearful, maybe it was traumatic.
Yes.
So maybe it brings about a lot of painful memories that are hard to relive.
Yeah.
So I think that's important too. We want to be conscious of that, you know, and creating a safe space essentially for people to feel like they can open up. And if not, then saying, you know, one day when you're feeling ready, I would love to hear more about your experience with XYZ, or I'd love to hear more about how you were able to push through postpartum depression, because it sounds like
Yes.
a really dark period of your, you know, so
Mhm.
you know, they may not want to because it's just painful to relive it. But
True.
again, just like, you know, we need to know cancer, we don't need to know all the details either. And that's okay too, to say, hey, I just want a better understanding of our family history so that I can understand what I'm susceptible to and what my children may be susceptible to, so we can look for those things. And you would want to know, right, if you had a family history of breast cancer or if you had a family history of colon cancer. Why? Because that means you're going to get screened earlier. And that's going to make a difference in terms of treatment if it's found sooner, right? If you can intervene earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true for mental health, right? We want to intervene, we want to prevent things from developing and getting out of control until it's too late, you know? So it's good to start those conversations.
So just like the conversation that, you know, with the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, we were talking about having that conversation between, you know, parents to the young Black child. We need to normalize the conversation, not just that one, but other conversations between parent and child. So everything you just said, absolutely. Let's start normalizing just that open dialogue.
Right.
We need to continue to do that and to create those safe spaces where people feel comfortable to talk about anything. That honesty between, you know, parent and child is needed, because even I've had it like I said, as a Generation Xer, there were some times that I was fearful of just having those conversations because I didn't want the repercussions, because I come from a generation that if you go too far, then you're being disrespectful and you might get slapped.
Huh? Being grown folk business.
Huh? I'm 40, so I'm like, and I still can't have certain conversations with my mom, you know? Right. So it's like, you just gotta, I just want our listeners that as you're listening to what she's saying and what we're saying in this episode, that don't be afraid to have those conversations now. We're starting to open up a little bit more, you know, these conversations, especially even with COVID, is like we realize we don't have the time we thought we had.
That's right. That is
so
true.
Take full advantage of these moments. Make these moments happen if they've never happened before. If you've gone through your entire life, like for me and both my stepfather and my biological father, we don't have the best relationship. But I was like, what would have happened this past year? One of them would have passed or because of COVID, or really just anything, and we still have these unresolved issues or things that I've never dealt with that I still carry around at 40 years old. And I'm like, nah, it's time out for that. You know, I'm taking a chapter out of my brother. He's a millennial and he's like the millennial. Whatever if there's like a picture of this is a millennial, it is him. So he's like, I don't know why. He's like, he has a why this, why that, why this, why that. I don't know. I'm depressed. So it's like, and I make joke with it, but it's really not a joking matter. But I'm taking a chapter from him. He wants an answer. He wants an answer, and so I'm getting to the point where now I want an answer.
Well, and what you're getting to, right, is we want to create a space for transparency and vulnerability, right? And that requires trust. It does. We need to trust that if we're going, if you're that Gen Zer and you're going to have a conversation with your parents about something that's serious and maybe thoughts that you may be having, well, you want to trust that they are not, number one, they're going to listen. And I think that's key. I think, we need to really encourage our parents, listen, don't be so quick to solve problems. Listen to your children and your teenagers, your emerging adults who have now gone back home because of COVID. After graduating college, we have a ton of adults now living at home. We have to create space to listen with no judgment, no criticism, to create that safe space so our children and youth can be vulnerable and transparent. Right. So, and that takes time. It means holding our tongue. We may want to be quick to, give them solutions and answers, but some not needing that. Sometimes they're really needing an ear, and they may not want you to solve them, but maybe you can actually help them connect with a professional to help solve some of those issues they may be dealing with. Right. So I think it's okay too to understand our limits as parents and caretakers and aunties, even if you're not a parent. I'm a godmom, I'm an auntie, to be able to say, I don't know how to help you with that, but I can see, I've noticed you've been isolating more. I noticed you, don't seem to be as happy and joyful anymore. I can tell a difference in even the quality of your work. I may not know how to help you, but let's work together to find someone who can help. Let's point you into the direction of getting help, because I want you to see that I see that you're struggling right now. And the other thing is I think creating that safe space, we can share a little bit about what we may be experiencing. And we don't have to go into details. Like you said, Aisha, you don't need to be in grown folks' business. I think there's something to be said about modeling behavior, modeling things for our youth. So if I'm struggling emotionally, I can actually say, hey, I'm having a hard time, but this is how I cope. Right?
Oh, that's
We're
good.
going to teach our children and our youth how to experience negative emotion, because that happens. We don't want to say, but don't cry, man up. We ain't got time for tears. Too blessed to be stressed. No, we want to create space for your emotions. And we want to say, hey, when I'm struggling, this is what I try to do to help myself feel better. We want to model that behavior. And that may even mean saying, you know what? Mommy's been stressed. Mommy is seeing a doctor to help her with her feelings. That's how I refer to myself. I'm a feelings doctor. So, I think it's important to normalize that conversation, even within the home, to say when people are struggling and create that safe space of communication.
I love that. I love that. It's almost like 3-year-olds. So when I first moved to Durham, I was actually teaching 3-year-olds in preschool, and they were they are so good at telling you, I'm angry. They're so good. And I love the innocence of it and the truth and the rawness, and how we as adults, we kind of grow out of that, and we're too cool for that to tell people. But they are and we teach, it's funny because we teach kids to do this, and then once we become adults, we kind of draw back from that. But we teach them to say that. We want them to say that instead of hitting somebody in the face with a toy. We want you to say, I'm angry.
Right.
I'm angry. Well, someone took the truck from me. And then we're supposed to say, I understand that makes you angry. I would be angry too. What is something that you could say to Johnny so he doesn't take your truck away?
Oh no, I got one better for you. My niece was like, I'm agitated. I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's a big word for a 5-year-old. You're agitated.
I know, that's right.
That's pretty serious too. I'm like, sis, we got to help you. We don't want to stay in an agitated state.
I was like, spell it.
I love it. I love it. So, Dr. Dzirasa, we want to be so respectful of your time. So I just had one question that I wanted to end on, and because I just cannot look at your Instagram and not say anything about the cutest little puppy that you have, Theodore.
Oh,
cute. So, you mentioned in your post about Theodore that you had a phobia of dogs before, and then you actually went to exposure therapy. So I wanted to know if you could talk to us about how did therapy help you overcome this fear, and then just for the listeners today, any advice that you have about overcoming your fear and kind of your journey with exposure therapy and little sweet Theodore. He's so
oh
cute.
my gosh. Again, y'all are just amazing. Y'all do your research. This is awesome. Okay, so yes, so I had a huge, huge fear of dogs growing up, and I could tell you lots of different stories. The craziest story was playing with a neighbor's dog. I was in the 6th grade, and maybe about 3 weeks later, I lost a big chunk of my hair. I mean, I was bald,
Wow.
And I went to the dermatologist. I was actually staying with my dad and my aunt for the summer, and my aunt took me to the dermatologist.
Wow.
And they were like, "Have you been around dogs lately?" And I was like, "Well, I did pet that dog."
Oh no.
Oh, this is a special canine condition that you got, and yeah, that's why you lost
Oh.
your hair. So y'all, when I tell you, it was this big.
Especially to be in 6th grade. I don't blame you.
So people can't hear, but y'all, it was big. I lost a ton of hair.
Wow.
Traumatizing because
Very.
girls, we are all about our hair, especially
I
in
was about to say, especially in 6th grade, that's the year.
Is
You're
it?
getting your self-confidence up. Oh
yeah.
man.
Oh.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
So, I mean, from that point on, I was like, I don't fool with dogs. And there were many more stories after that. Many more. I could talk for days about crazy dog stories. But anyways, so the therapy I had was kind of in vitro, or in vivo, I guess. It was a real life therapy. So I didn't go specifically to a therapist for it. But when I worked at the last job, they actually had a therapy dog.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nobody told me during the interview. I went and took a whole tour of the facility. It wasn't until I showed up to work one day.
Oh no.
Mom just rolled up on me, and I was y'all, I screamed so loud, and I started crying at work.
Oh.
And I was having a true panic attack. And because everybody is new, it's a new job, and everybody was around me and everybody saw me, it kind of then I just started laughing at myself.
So that's why you left, because of the dog.
That's really why. Yeah. I'll tell you, because I was exposed to her all the time, and when we think about fears and phobias, usually what we do with patients, we do what's called exposure and response prevention, where we expose them to that in very small increments, usually not as direct as me having a dog all up on me, so maybe we would start with having pictures of a dog, and then being in the same space but the dog's on a leash, and then, so gradual, but this was kind of oh, let's just jump in the deep end. But because I had to be at work every day and the dog was there, I had to just learn day after day to reduce my anxiety. And to the point where there was one day I actually had a patient who I really thought needed the dog, and I went to go find the dog. I was like, "Where's that dog?"
Oh.
And they were like, "Dr. Dzirasa, you looking for the dog? What?" So anybody who knows me, they are in shock right now. They're like, "I cannot believe this girl has a puppy," but his name is Theodore. He's a Malibu. You can follow him on IG.
What?
Yeah, shameless plug.
My name is _Theo.
Oh my goodness.
So cute.
He is the cutest thing.
Hey, look at it this way. Therapy works.
Therapy works, but here's what I'll tell you about this dog, and it's been so amazing. So unfortunately, I had a big loss this year, lost a really close friend, and he picked up on that. He picked up on my grief, and he picked up on the sadness, and he would just kind of curl up and then just start, in his doggy way, trying to show his love. But I was like, I can actually see why people like getting emotional support dogs because they can sense that energy. They can sense when something's wrong, and then they come and they try to help you feel better. And it really did help. I was like, oh my gosh, like he is showing me so much love right now, and I'm here for all of this. And it was so therapeutic. So I'm looking into seeing if I can get him to be a therapeutic dog. That way I can bring him to work when we can all go outside again.
Yeah.
Bringing people to the office. So hopefully, I'm not sure. I have to look into it, but
that's a great idea. I'm a dog lover through and through. I hope to have my own again one day. But
me too.
Yeah, dogs. I love dogs.
Any day.
I am team dogs all day. I don't like cats. No,
I'm a dog. Yeah,
I'm good. I have an allergy, but I still don't like them.
Me too. I have an allergy, but I'm like, even if I didn't, it's enough.
I'm good. All right. So the last question that we have, if you could, you're an entrepreneur. You are a Black woman doing her thing, have the respect of both your colleagues and also the people who work under you based off of the other interviews I've watched. Can you take a moment and just speak a word of encouragement to our current, future Black RDU entrepreneurs that are listening today?
Absolutely. So I would encourage you by saying, first, take care of yourself. Prioritize your health and your mental health. That is so important because as an entrepreneur, you're giving so much of yourself to other people. It's really important to fill your own cup. So, and that's not selfish. It really is important so that you can give more of yourself. But we have to take care of ourselves. We have to. If we know that we need time off, take time off. I'm preaching to myself. So self-care is key. The other thing I would say is just check your fears. I think, when I think about stepping out with Catalyst, I probably would have done it sooner, but I do think fear held me back. And, whether that's a fear of failure, I know so many of us put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect. And because we're Black, we have to like extra perfect. But we really don't. It's okay. It's actually okay to fail. We grow when we fail. We can use it as a learning opportunity. We're not defined by our failures, but we also don't have to allow fear to limit us or prevent us from really chasing after our dreams. So number one, take care of yourself. Number two, just be sure, step out on your fear.
Yes, sir. Everybody clap it up. Clap it up. Clap it up for Dr. Erikka. Oh,
that
my
was
goodness.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Dzirasa. This was amazing.
I enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me.